So this is the new Novastar H series processor. This is the H5, meaning it is a 5U rack mount system. They have an H2, an H5, an H9, and an H15. Numbers on the end represent the spacing that's required to install it inside of a rack. On the front, you have all of your device info laid out in front of you, showing you what ports are currently active and in use. You got a multi-viewer, which is not currently configured. Touchscreen on the front. Settings, language. You can change your network and such inside of here. Factory resets. And that's pretty much what we have on the front panel. It also shows your IP address, which you will then need to use to come up here to control this unit. I really like that it is a web UI versus standalone software. This allows anyone with an iPad or an iPhone or computer that's on the same network to be able to control this unit, such as switching. So that's pretty amazing. The unit itself does switching and scaling all internally without any additional latency, which I find phenomenal. That just saves you another piece of hardware that you need to purchase to accomplish the same result. Real quickly, on the back of this unit, it is a full modular design, very similar to something like a Barco E2 or a Christie Spider. Over here on the left-hand side is your input selection, which is notated by the letter I, as in indigo. Over here on the right-hand side, we have our output selection, which is specified by O, as in omega. There will be an enhanced version of the H9, which shares input and output on that same bus. So it'll be specified I/O, letting you know that it can be either configured as an input or an output. But in this case, we have input and output. There are dual power supplies for redundancy, which is very nice. Should be able to hot swap. Put those in as needed. You have your power switch. Above that is your COM, USB, Ethernet, which is how we're connecting to our computer for control, and Genlock. This particular model that was sent for the demo has a few option cards installed. We have DVI, we have 4x HDMI. These right here are going to be 1080p 60 or 4K 30 using only port 4 and port 2 when you have these set up in, I believe it is single link mode. Each of these are 1080p, or you can disable port 1 and port 3 and only use port 2 and 4, which is specified by HDMI 0.14. And at that point, you get twice the bandwidth, so you can get 6G, I believe. Below that, we have an HDMI 2.0 and DisplayPort 1.2 card. This will allow you to get your 4K 60 and higher resolutions. Below that, we have a Ethernet, which is used for webcams and protocols of the sort. I believe Novastar told me they're working on implementing NDI on this at some point as well. Might be a while, but that would be very interesting as well, where you can start incorporating new tech products into the processor. And below that, we have 4 3G SDI inputs. This still allows us to have 6 more inputs on this unit if we need it. And there are additional input cards. See the Novastar website for full lists of option cards. It is quite extensive. Over here on the output selection, this, if you own a M-Control 4K, should look very similar. You have your 16 ports and your 2 fiber SFPs. So the way this is currently loaded is we can now do, just using these 2 ports alone, we can do 8K by 4K. And then we can also have an additional spare if we need it. This is a lot of output. And then below that, we also have a MVR, which is kind of a multi-viewer card that you can send out via Ethernet or via HDMI. All right, let's flip this back around. There are very large fans on both sides, and when this thing turns on and turns off, it sounds like a jet engine going off, which can be a little concerning, but at the same time, you're definitely getting the proper cooling that you need. These fans are more than adequate. Probably would need to dust and clean out, as any hardware would, but very impressed with the fans that we had right there. So as far as the control of the unit, we have a couple sections at top. We have the configuration section, and this right here displays your output selection on the back. So right now we have our 3 output cards, and what you can do is you can drag and drop your output card on the canvas right here, and then you can specify the width and the height and your X and Y axis offset of that card on this axis. From there, you would go over to your programming, and this is how you assign your inputs to your output canvas. So currently we have input 1 connected to this device, coming in on, so right here the way this is listed is 2-1, meaning that is card 2, port number 1. And if I look on the back, that is exactly where that's at. Port 1, so all these ports, or card 1, port 1 through 4, these are going to be your DVIs. This is green, meaning it's active, it's bumped to the top of the list. 2-1 is card 2, port 1, and then the rest of the capture inputs for that card is down below. And you can scroll through, and the way you assign that is you just click and drag it right onto the canvas. And at this point, you can position X and Y, and you can do scaling all from the web UI. So that's pretty incredible for me, being able to do switching and scaling from a web UI without any dedicated software. That's pretty cool. So from here, you would assign your inputs to your output canvas, excuse me, and then you would hit save down here, and you can give it a preset. We already have a preset 1, so let's give this preset 2. So now we have preset 1 and preset 2, and this is how you can go about swapping between different configurations. You can have it mapped one way and then mapped another way, and go cycle between them depending on what's being displayed on your stage or event at that time, which is very handy. Up at the top, you can black it out, freeze, fade to black. Going back to the configuration tab, you can send test cards right here by clicking the output, test pattern, and boom. At this point, you can send your test card all from the web UI as well. So if you're wanting to build out your wall, you don't have to dig through a bunch of menus. You can just tie this in, boom, and you can test your wall as it's being built. You can also adjust the color of this out here, so you can change your white balance and hue as well per output. Again, I think that's pretty incredible. This would be your multi-viewer tab, which is not currently set up. And then we have the device tab, which is very similar to the device tab on the front display. And if you hover over and click your card, it'll tell you all the information about your card. And from here to where you can also enable or disable certain features per port, such as limited to full RGB range. Or you can come down here and put things into dual link mode to double up the bandwidth and allow you to get your 6G. So this menu will change depending on what card you have selected. So if I select the network card at this point, I can now assign IP addresses. And then finally, over here at the settings tab is where you can configure even more information about your input and output cards. You can come in here and you can do communications, firmware updates, your typical settings as you would see is right here. Going back to your programming, right here is where you set up your scenes, and then you can change all your scenes also via your Stream Deck. You can connect to Stream Deck and send out the commands via that way, which is also super handy. But yeah, my first impressions of the H series kind of blew me out of the water for the features you get for the price you pay. I like to explain it to people that aren't familiar with this, it's kind of like an E2 married a Novastar UHD or 4K. So it gives you the option to do switching and scaling. It's modular, and it's also a sending card. So very, very impressed. I know personally, going forward, H series will be the only thing myself and my company buys, just because of the values there. I can buy a loaded out H2 cheaper than I can buy two 4K processors, the M Control 4Ks. So that saves me money. I gain features by scaling and switching, which I previously didn't have, which also saves me hardware, latency, and failure points. So all in all, very, very impressed with this. Fully modular, basically built to spec, built to your design, how you want it. Fill it full of the cards you want, skip all the features you don't need, save yourself some money in the process, and you get a really nice control via the web without any dedicated software. So very impressed. Thank you, Novastar.